And now I'd like to invite Don Cravins Jr. from the Urban League, Senior Vice President for Policy and Executive Director of the Washington Bureau. Thank you.
Today, my name is Don Cravins Jr., and I serve as the Senior Vice President for Policy for the National Urban League and also as the Executive Director of the National Urban League's Washington Bureau. As you know, or you may not know, the National Urban League is the nation's oldest and largest civil rights and urban advocacy organization dedicated to economic empowerment in historically underserved urban communities. Founded in 1910, the Urban League has empowered and improved the lives of tens of millions of African Americans all across our nation, and we've done it through our 88 affiliates who provide direct services to men and women in those communities in over 36 states, including the District of Columbia. And we also conduct policy research and advocacy in our Washington Bureau, which I am very honored to oversee. It's appropriate that the National Urban League is here with you today. When I saw the title of our session, Leveling the Playing Field, Creating Opportunities and Removing Barriers, that's what we do at the Urban League. And just 3 weeks ago, we released our annual report, The State of Black America, the 40th anniversary doc of the State of Black America. And what the State of Black America has done for 40 years, since it was begun by Mr. Vernon Jordan, our president and CEO at the time, it continues to highlight the inequalities that exist in the urban areas. It continues to highlight the wealth gaps that exist in the urban areas. And this year, it even highlights the unemployment rates that in some urban areas are triple for African Americans and Latinos compared to our white brothers and sisters. But we didn't just highlight problems in this year's State of Black America. We also talked about solutions. And our president and CEO, Mr. Morial, who apologizes for not being here today, but will submit testimony via video next week and written testimony, lays out his plan for solutions in our State of Black America. And his plan is called the Main Street Marshall Plan, to coin a phrase from the Marshall Plan after World War II, when we reinvested and rebuilt Europe, war-torn Europe. We believe it's time to reinvest and rebuild America, the urban communities of America. This bold and strategic investment, dare I say overinvestment in America. Wouldn't it be nice to overinvest in America? In America's urban communities requires a multi-annual, multi-pronged commitment over the next 5 years that would course correct our urban communities and our main streets. The Urban League will submit this plan in detail before the June 18th deadline. As I said, we will do so both in writing as well as via video. Our president and CEO, who could not be here today, will do that. We ask you respectfully to consider allowing the State of Black America as well as the Marshall Plan to be part of the Democratic National Committee platform. I will talk a little bit very briefly about the key components of the plan today, since my time is limited. We are looking for investments and improvement in education, employment, housing, and infrastructure. The same four empowerment goals that the Urban League had in mind when it was started in 1910, when African Americans were leaving Jim Crow South, moving to the North for better opportunities. The Urban League was founded for that reason, and we are still fighting for those reasons. Education, we are talking about things like universal childhood education, doubling the Pell Grant so that more young men and women can attend college here in America. And employment, we are talking about a federal living wage indexed to inflation. We are talking about a new Main Street small and micro business program to make sure that would be especially targeted to minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. And why is that? Because statistics show that women and minority business owners tend to hire people who go to church with them and who live in their communities, people who look like them. And if we are ever going to deal with this unemployment in our urban communities, we've got to get businesses that can hire those folks as well. Housing, we want to see a revised home ownership tax credit program, expansion of financial literacy, and a home buyer education and counseling program, and expansion of the Section 8 program to make sure that more eligible families who qualify for Section 8 are able to achieve the American dream of having a home. And then finally, we have got to invest, and again, dare I say overinvest in the infrastructure of our urban communities, whether that be transportation, whether that be buildings or whether that be broadband, so that our young men and our young women have the same access to the World Wide Web and to the technology that is out there. We have to invest in the infrastructure. In conclusion, President Obama and many of the members of Congress who have left today, they were very successful, and I worked in the Senate at the time, very successful in righting the American ship after 2009, taking us from the brink of depression, while we were in a great recession, and righting the ship. However, the recovery from the recession has not hit every urban city. There are many, many urban cities that are still struggling. The economy and the infrastructure of these communities have been shattered, not by bombs or by tanks, like in Europe, but by indecisiveness, neglect, malfeasance, corporate malfeasance, government indifference. We cannot continue to rely on the policies that have proven ineffective in communities with high unemployment and low income. You see, we are not asking for a new deal at the Urban League. We are demanding a better deal for the urban communities of America. We must focus our resources and our efforts on the neighborhoods where they are most needed. And so, Acting Chair, I just ask that, again, we will submit our written testimony next week and a video testimony. We will ask that our State of Black America and our Marshall Plan be included, part of that, and ask that you respectfully review that. And I'll just say this in closing. Several years ago, in 2013, many of the historical civil rights organizations, as well as some others, put forth the 21st century agenda for jobs and freedom. And I didn't have enough copies to pass out today. But we will also include that as well. That was a collaboration with the National Urban League, NAN, the NAACP, the Coalition on Black Civic Participation, as well as many of our other African American leaders. It even delves further into some of the other issues, the social justice issues, and some of the other issues we think that we should be looking as we develop our platform for the party. With that, ma'am, I will yield for questions.
Thank you so much. Questions? Paul?
Thank you for your testimony and for your emphasis on investment, Mr. Cravins. Would you want the platform to draw attention and to point a finger at the disinvestment, the political and economic decisions that have eroded the well-being of our big cities? I mean, it's one thing to call for adding investment where it's lacking, and that you've identified the 4 key areas in which that needs to be done. But you want the platform to go because you use the words that we headlined this session of removing barriers and expanding opportunities. And when we talk about removing barriers, we're making an implication that there have been wrong-headed decisions that are hurting people now, and we have to decide how explicit we want to be about that in our platform. What's your advice?
My advice would be we must definitely pay attention to the past, and you have to acknowledge things so that we don't repeat those things. What I would suggest and I would caution against is pointing fingers and focusing on the negative. What I've been very proud of to see with both of our candidates in this election cycle is both of the candidates have said, we got to stop complaining about past and we got to focus on the future. And so all I would say is, yes, let's look at past policies that failed to make sure that good intentions no good deed goes unpunished. Make sure that good intentions don't lead to negative results. But I would absolutely caution against us pointing fingers, because some of the people who put barriers in place unintentionally were some of our very dear friends. I mean, some of the policies that exist in the inner cities were done by friends, and the intention was not to harm people. The intention was maybe this will help. We've learned from that. And so my advice would be, let's move forward. Let's have a robust agenda on how we can rebuild, how we can invest, and how we can work together to better things in those communities.
Ms. Parker?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here today. My question on the National Urban League is, it says it's dedicated to economic empowerment in historically underserved urban communities.
Yes.
And I primarily see African American and a little bit about Hispanic.
Yes.
Do you also work with the urban Native community and Asian American communities?
Yes, in many of those communities, so all of our affiliates are their own separate 501c3 organizations, each run by their own man or woman who is a president and CEO. I'm proud to say that many of our Urban League affiliates, depending on the geographics and the demographics of that area, absolutely partner in many, many different ways to provide the services and the empowerment. And I'm also proud to say the Urban League does not turn anyone around when they walk into the door of the Urban League. And so we've got so many programs at our affiliates, whether they be reentry programs or after-school programs or workforce training programs, if that's what that community calls for. The Urban League doesn't say, no, you're a little too dark for the Urban League. You can't participate in this program. We are open to all of those urban communities. We've just, as I've said, our history was formed. We were formed because African Americans were leaving the Deep South to escape the vestiges of slavery. And when they got to the north and to urban areas, they found they were still having trouble with education and housing and employment. And so the Urban League was really a collaboration of different leagues that got together and said, let's see if we can help people find a better life. But today, the modern day Urban League, we try to help where we can be helpful to anyone, regardless of their race or their ethnicity.
Great.
Yes, thank
Dr.
you.
West?
Yes, I want to thank you so very much for being here. It's part of a very rich tradition. And I think it's impossible for us to reflect on a progressive urban policy without coming to terms with the most comprehensive report on the state of Black America. And it's true, it's primarily on the black side of the chocolate slice that the Urban League is highlighted. But we've always embraced others, because I'm very much a part of the same tradition. But it seems to me, and you tell me what you think, that what I like about this Main Street Marshall Plan is that it puts a priority on Black poor and working people. See, oftentimes the success of Black upper class and upper middle class overshadows the plight of our precious Black poor and working poor. Now, for all American citizens across the board and all Black folk, but oftentimes the poor and working classes get pushed to the margins. And what I like about this, of course, I've already read this, so this has come out a couple of weeks ago, that you have this broader vision. And so I just want to thank you for that and let you know we will be wrestling with this as we write this platform.
Dr. West, thank you so much. What I will tell you is, when I saw the title that my boss chose for the Marshall Plan,
Absolutely.
From Poverty to Prosperity.
That's right.
As an employee, I was very proud of that, because you're exactly right. We have focused a lot in modern day America. We've all fallen victim to it, where we focus
That's right.
on helping those who already have a little bit get a little bit more. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
That's fine, that's fine. Yeah, that's right.
But we got to focus on people who have nothing. And there are a lot of people who are living in our urban communities who have nothing.
Absolutely.
And are struggling each and every day. And so we hope that this Marshall Plan and the platform that you're working on, ladies and gentlemen, helps all of those folks. From poverty to prosperity. And there's help every step along the way. Thank you.
Mr. McKibben?
Just one particular thing, as you're submitting more testimony, I'd be grateful for particular suggestions around public transportation. I think it's an area that we've lost hold of in a lot of ways in recent years, policy-wise, and one that I'd be grateful for some pointed and explicit suggestions about.
We will do that, and we will also, because this question was asked for the lady who testified before me, the economic benefits of the public transportation. Not only the access and the ease of travel and the social effects of public transportation, but the economic aspects, the short-term GDP growth that urban transportation, when we build stuff, the jobs that are created, the wealth that is generated, the people who get a sense of pride in building those things. So we will definitely present that in our detailed plan. Thank you.
Representative Reese?
Thank you. I too want to thank you and Mark Moriel, and certainly my local and state urban leagues for the work that you have done. And I know that in our party, we have diversity. We heard from the Indian Nation, and we've heard from the Asian Pacific Americans. And I don't think it's bad to hear from the Urban League focusing on African Americans. I know in Ohio, over 100,000 additional African Americans voted in Ohio to help us get to the White House. And so the question becomes, with this group who has been a loyal base to our party, in our platform, I looked at as a salesmanship of why you should vote for us, because you're included. So I guess my question to you, we've had a number of training programs that we partner with the Urban League and the micro business piece, but I want you to focus on the business piece, because I know we're going to do a lot on poverty. A lot of people go through poverty, but coming from a African-American owned business myself, of my parents of over 40 years, where there's been little help, I think that's a component, because a lot of millennials want to be entrepreneurs or are entrepreneurial, and sometimes we don't have them included in the process. So can you maybe talk about the micro loan program, or the need or some policy that we should have in there for minority businesses and not leaving African-American businesses behind? We lost so many during the recession that never recovered. So do you have anything in there that maybe you think in our platform that we could speak to these minority businesses who are not on Wall Street but on Main Street and are located down the street in our neighborhoods?
Representative Reese, I could talk about this all day. It's my passion, small business. Before this job, I got a chance to work for Senator Mary Landrieu from the great state of Louisiana. She was chair of the Small Business Committee, and I was staff director of that United States Senate Committee, and I did it for 4 years, and it's what I love. It's my passion. So thank you for that question. One of the things I'm most proud of at the Urban League is we've got 11 entrepreneurship centers, one in your home state. And what the center does, and it's part of the Small Business Administration's network, where they've got entrepreneurship centers, small business development centers. The Minority Business Development Agency has their own centers as well. But what we have been able to do at the Urban League is to make sure that our 11 centers abide by stringent requirements, and that I am seeing firsthand here in Washington, at the Greater Washington Urban League, we've got a dynamic entrepreneurship center that not only trains the startup, but also helps some of those people that Dr. West was talking about the businesses that already have some capacity. How do I get contracting here in the hub of contracting of America and the world? And so we work with startups, micro businesses, all businesses. We don't care what color you are, but we focus in the inner city, so most of them are African American, and we help them through that whole step of the way. So it's a one-stop shop. It's the financing, it's the contracting, it's the counseling. I believe more investment in those types of programs would have an immediate effect. Now, when you ask people in government to invest in counseling programs, many of my friends on the other side of the aisle say that's a waste of money. And I would dare say, Representative Reese, that is in fact just not true. And if you look at the money that when you invest in those small businesses and you invest in those development centers, there's a high rate of return on those dollars because those programs are successful. You're a small business owner. How invaluable is counseling? How invaluable is having a peer to discuss, someone, an expert to ask and to call on for advice when you need that help, who can introduce you to that banker, who can provide the access to capital that you really, really need. So one of the things that this party could do is reaffirm our commitment to the Small Business Administration, which President Obama has done. I love this stuff, and I promise, Madam Chair, I'm not going to overdo it. Yeah. The past administration, before President Obama, cut the Small Business Administration more than any other agency in the federal government. So for the past 8 years, we've been rebuilding the Small Business Administration. But more programs like that, a stronger Minority Business Development Agency, which is a small, powerful, muscular organization in the Department of Commerce. My personal opinion is that that agency should be strengthened and grown because they make a direct impact on minority and women-owned businesses. And so more focus, investment, reinvestment in people could make a difference in those businesses. And those people will hire people, and those people are going to get unemployment down in those inner cities because they're going to hire people from the inner cities.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we very much welcome additional information on these particular points in your written testimony as well.
Thank you.